The flight to Beacon Academy was uneventful and short, only about an hour or so. Regardless of the flight length, it felt amazing to walk off the bulkhead and stretch my limbs. Even the prosthetic felt more limber after a few stretches. I looked around and saw crowds upon crowds of people. My stomach sank a bit. I wasn't the most social human being on Remnant, and the more people that gathered, the more my introvertedness grew. Feck. I closed my eyes, took a breath, walking forward. I looked at the large building, slightly enamored by the architecture. Sure, I'm more of a mechanic geek, but I don't believe I've ever seen buildings this tall. Not that I remember, anyways. I think I remember Dad telling me that we went to the main kingdom of Vale when I was small, but I've forgotten it. Wait, Dad? Oh God, I told them I was gonna call! I immediately pulled out my scroll. Oh shite, I almost dropped it. Okay, just dial their number and act like you didn't forget to call them right when you stepped off. The tone rang out 4 times before I saw Mom and Dad's faces fill the screen.
Well, looks like Little Rabbit made it to her destination. I told you there was nothing to worry about, love.
From the look on my mother's face, I had a feeling that she wasn't the one who was worried.
Oh, Bruno. Who was the one pacing around the house mumbling about engine failure?
My dad's face turned quickly to Mom's. His face was written in betrayal. I actually laughed a bit. I'm fine, I promise. It's a lot bigger than I thought. Guess I should have expected that.
Aye, it is one of the 4 major Hunters' Academies. Now, Clover, remember to keep everything in sight. Trust only the people who will be on your team. Don't be intimidated by how they send you into the initiation. And only just reach the goal as effectively as possible. Oh, and don't let any boy...
By the gods, Bruno, calm down!
I blushed heavily. I didn't even want to know what my dad was going to say. Mom looked back at me with sympathy in her eyes.
Love, just do your best, and we'll be proud of you. You're a Gladen, a family of the best trap hunters, and you are no different. We'll let you go, before your father goes into another rant.
I mean it. Don't let any boy...
Bye, love you both. I tapped the scroll against my forehead. What the hell, Dad?
They looked really nice.
I jumped up at the voice behind me. I whipped around to see a girl standing way too close. She was a little taller than I was. Her eyes were bright and full of joy. I looked a little closer and noticed that they were different colors. One was green, and one was brown. Her skin tanned after long hours in the sun. She had a compound bow with unnecessary stalks on the side, and a quiver filled to the max with arrows. She took another step closer, practically on top of me at this point.
Hi, I'm Esme Burnett. I'm gonna be a student here. I'm gonna kill lots and lots and lots of Grim! Who are you? How are you? Are you gonna be a huntress too? That's so cool! Can we be from...
Okay, you need to slow down for a moment. I will remove my hand, but only if you will be silent and let me answer. Do you understand? I'm just gonna assume that you said yes. I slowly took my hand off her mouth. She was actually quiet, with a very broad smile on her face. Clover Gladen. I'm okay, I guess. Yes, I'm going to be a huntress, and I don't see why not. Even as I said yes, I could feel her energy rise. Her body seemingly vibrating to the ever-building pressure that could explode any moment. Before I could say another word, the girl launched herself as if she became one of the arrows on her back and tackled me to the ground. My lack of preparation for this prevented any sort of adequate reaction time, so onto the ground we went.
Yay, friends! And Dr. Reignier almost said I wouldn't make any friends by doing this. Shows what he knew. So what do we do now? Are we huntresses now?
After registering the force of the fall, I looked at her dead in the eyes, confused. She was dead serious, wasn't she? I nudged and she got off, and I sat up and continued staring at her. What the hell did I just get myself into? I looked around. Most people seemed to be walking towards the buildings. Maybe there were teachers waiting for us there or something. I looked back at Esme, who was just smiling with the smile that made it seem like either the inside her mind was an endlessly destructive hurricane, or there was nothing going on at all. Well, I guess we'll just head to the courtyard and see what everyone else is doing.
Like, follow the leader!
Yes, just like that. Esme immediately hopped up and held her hand to help me up. Her hand corresponded with my hidden prosthetic. As I was still fairly self-conscious of other people touching it, I just held out my flesh hand, and Esme just switched hands to yank me on my feet. Happened so fast, nearly giving me whiplash.
I played a similar game with some bandits back in Vacuo. Though it was more bullets and angry than just navigating through a courtyard.
How does this girl function? Like, the random correlation of fighting for your life with some bandits. Something I've never really had to deal with myself. To finding the next stop to get finished signing into the school. Again, it's a hurricane or void argument of her brain activity. Never been to Vacuo. Is it as bad as people say?
Oh, no, not at all. Sure, the frequency of Grim attacks have increased, and bandits like to bully, but other than that, it's a very peaceful place.
I think you and I have a very different idea of peaceful.
Well, I'm sure it can't be that different.
We walked further into the property, and the buildings felt even larger. A sense of anxiety came over me. What if I got lost? Even worse, what if I got lost with Esme? Oh god, if we're on the same team, we could get stranded. What if she doesn't ever stop talking? Grim could be on us in minutes. On the other hand, she did say Grim attacks have increased, so maybe that's a good thing, because she's still alive. Also, her surviving bandits, maybe she can fight people decently. Though, how well trained were bandits? Before I could dive deeper into the sanctuary of my thoughts, Esme dragged me to the side, barely able to keep up. Where the bloody hell are we going?
I smell food!
Seriously? Nearly ripping my good arm off for some food? Sure enough, on the other side of the courtyard, there were a few stalls serving food to the new students. And from the looks of the clothing, a few of the current active students were sneaking out with some food as well. That's when I heard a weird noise. I looked around, trying to fight the motion blur of Esme's speed. Confused, I looked to my right, seeing two women, one wearing what seemed to be some kind of uniform, though one I didn't recognize. She had white and tan hair with fox ears. She also held a silver platter. The other was wearing a white suit with purple and black trim. Her long, golden hair, perfectly groomed, standing next to a fountain. They weren't the ones making the noise. I turned to my right, seeing the wall separating the airship landing pads and the courtyard. The sound was rapidly getting closer. It sounded like screaming. I immediately put my heels to the ground to slow Esme down. Granted, it ended up making us both fall face first onto the ground. I looked up to see a small young man scream his way past us like a missile, causing a hole through the wall. He was heading straight for the fountain. Without hesitation, the faunus stood in front of the blonde, holding out the platter. It glowed briefly, and once Rocket Boy crashed into the surprisingly sturdy fountain, the water bounced off of some shield produced in front of the faunus. There was a brief moment of nothing, as if it all went quiet, as students looked irritated as water dropped off of them, while the two women were perfectly dry.
The absolute nerve! To throw something so ghastly at me, Marigold Memoria! Do they not know who I am? Evidently not, my lady. Few we have encountered so far have. If only they could be forgotten. Oh well. Let's move on from this shell. As you wish.
They both walked in near perfect unison towards the direction that other students were beginning to gather.
That looked like fun! Can I go, please, please, please?
I looked at Esme, so confused. The guy was screaming in pure fear. Where did that seem like fun? We stood back up, allowing me the chance to look through the hole. A few faunus had gathered on the other side. 3 girls and a guy. He had one in one of his arms, probably pulled her out of the way. His tail swayed as he peered through the hole at Esme and me. He let go of the panicked cat faunus.
Everyone okay?
His green eyes seemed dark, with how intently he stared at either of us. He was fairly handsome. Good build, I mean. We're fine. No one was hurt. Well, besides the guy himself, of course.
We're getting food.
The faunus looked at both of us and nodded.
Good.
Making friends already.
Shush.
I noticed a rabbit faunus rub his back as they walked away. I watched until, again, Esme dragged me to food. Esme was not paying attention to anything and bumped into someone. She had shoulder-length purple hair and purple eyes. Her food had fallen and both of us stopped. Her expression was plain. There was no sign of, well, anything. Esme looked horrified and very apologetic.
My food fell.
I am so sorry! Food just smelled so good and I wasn't paying attention because food and... Oh god, I'm so sorry!
It's fine. Wasn't actually hungry, but my brother told me that I should eat, so I'm gonna grab some more.
Like that, she turned and walked back to what I could assume was the stall she had just left. Her entire demeanor just didn't feel natural. What the hell did I just get myself involved in?
I'm so glad she wasn't mad.
Haven't even known her for a day, and already I can tell Esme is oblivious to everything except for food and fun. Albeit her own definition of fun, but still. Let's just slowly get food. My shoulder can only take so much. To my joy, she agreed and we each got a hot dog. Finally having the... and she's finished the hot dog.
I'm gonna get more food. Will you, wait for me?
This girl has dragged me around, talked my head off, nearly got me hit by a human bullet. Yeah, Esme, I'll wait.
Immediately when the airship took off from Teodol, the pilots told me it was going to be a long time before we arrived. I took that opportunity to close my eyes and sleep. There wasn't anyone else on this airship, and I doubted the Mistrali soldiers wished to have a conversation with me. A long, dreamless sleep took over quickly. I'd never been much of a sound sleeper. Yet something about the idle chatter of the soldiers and the hum of the engine just soothed me enough to sleep all the way to Beacon. I felt a hand on my shoulder and a familiar voice speak through the slumber.
Rowan, it's time to wake up. You made it.
I had to be dreaming. No way Olivia was here. She went to Haven Academy. I felt more shaking, make me open one eye. It was hard to focus, but I saw 2 figures standing over me. One with brown hair and rabbit ears, and the other with large bat wings. I closed my eyes and rubbed them a little. Surely I'm seeing things. Wait. Bunny ears. Bat wings. I looked up, and there stood before me my mate and my guard, who was also supposed to go with her to Haven, were standing right in front of me.
Why are you 2 here?
I don't think he's happy to see us.
I'm sure he's just surprised.
Don't ignore me. Why are you 2 here?
I figured you would still go to Beacon Academy, so we snuck onto the airship while they were getting ready. Told the soldiers and pilot that we were supposed to go, but it was last minute.
You can't just walk into a hunter school.
We had our stuff transferred yesterday.
You what?
I told her it was a very bad idea, my prince, that you would be upset.
So why are you here?
I don't like going to new places alone.
Olivia.
I know what you're going to say. You want to grow stronger to be a better chieftain and not have to depend on me for everything. That's fine. I won't interfere unless absolutely necessary. But
She gripped my face to force me to look into her eyes.
as much as I am yours, you are mine. I'm not leaving you alone completely. There would be no way I could deal with that. You are a fool to even think of such a thing.
She smiled and rested her forehead against mine. It was warm. I felt her semblance leak into me as she made my rage subside. I knew this feeling. She didn't have to make contact, but it worked so much better when she did. Just because you're calming me down doesn't mean we won't talk about this later.
Oh, I know. I just want you to be comfortable on our first day.
We should get off the airship. The soldiers will start asking more questions.
I turned to look to see the soldiers looking at us, hints of annoyance on their faces. I stood, did a quick half bow, and led the two female faunus off the airship. I looked over to my right, seeing an airship different from the others. It had the symbol I knew as Atlas on the side. A woman jumped out the door. She was tall, long silky hair flowing behind her. She had such a stone-cold face as she walked towards the entrance. A clearing from Olivia's throat made me refocus. Due to her semblance, I was relatively calm. Regardless, I still had a sense of annoyance thinking about how she lied about coming here. A hand on my shoulder turned my attention to the rabbit faunus.
You're getting that clenched jaw when something is annoying you. Is seeing me causing you that much stress?
Why did you come here? We talked, and you said you were going to Haven Academy so that I could stand on my own 2 feet.
So what I'm supposed to do is just let my mate go to a different school? You can do that with me here. I'm not going to talk to Athena and be mocked seeing her engaged side by side. I don't care if we're on the same team. I do want to have a front row seat to see you grow. I do want to be by your side, and I do want to be able to have a goddamn lunch with you!
I don't think I've ever seen Olivia so upset before. Her eyes went from calm to intense. I let out a gentle breath and smiled a little. I think this is the first time you yelled at me.
It's not my fault you aren't thinking about it from that perspective, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised with how home is.
She touched my face. Her return smile was sad, though.
Let's go and get ready, and we can talk more about this later.
I looked at Amethyst. She stood guard of our conversation. For someone born of drifters with no goal to settle, she was very dutiful and dedicated to her place as my guard. I nodded to her as she stood straight and moved towards us. She pointed towards the school, which in my frustration, I just noticed how truly huge Beacon Academy was. My jaw fell open in awe. Nothing in Teodol could even compare to this. It was like a small village could fit just inside the main building.
I recommend we head in through that gate towards the school, my prince.
I vaguely heard Olivia chuckle and my hand was dragged, forcing my body to move toward the school. I imagined it was Olivia pulling me, but the sight of the academy was mesmerizing. This is going to be my home for the next few months? Why would I want to leave? Besides my duty as prince. We neared the brick wall separating the courtyard from the outside. I felt someone bump into me, knocking me out of the trance, forcing me to look down to see what I ran into. She had a green hoodie on with the hood up. The temperature was well too warm for a hoodie, but then I noticed small little movements of ears beneath the hood. She was a faunus of some kind. I frowned a little, a bit saddened she felt the need to hide her ears.
Sorry, I didn't mean to run into you. Just forget about this and move on.
Her apology was very fast-paced, and I just put my hand on her shoulder. Hey, look at me for a second. She slowly looked at me, and my eyes went wide for a second. She was cute, long blonde hair, big violet eyes that had nervousness deep within them. I smiled gently and patted her head like I would my little sister's. I swayed my tail, catching her attention, making her eyes follow up and see Olivia's ears and Amethyst's bat wings. She held her hoodie a bit tighter. You're fine, okay? People bump into one another. It's a normal thing that doesn't need an apology. Before the girl could say anything else, I heard a screaming and looked over to see something speeding towards us. I surfed close to me as fast as I could, the object barely missing the faunus, and went through the brick wall. I looked at her, seeing a scarlet-red face, avoiding looking up, but no damage was done to her. Her hood had fallen off, revealing 2 cat ears folded firmly against her head. I peeked through the wall, hearing someone talk about how fun something
like
was.
Fun! Can I go, please,
I saw 2 girls standing in front of me on the other side of the hole. One was brimming with excitement, a mental note to keep Gage away from her. She had long brown hair with 2 different colored eyes, one dark green and one brown. Her skin tanned from the sun. I looked at the other girl. She looked confused at first, and then looked nervous when she saw us. She did have a projectile of some kind go right by her. Not very surprised that she would have that reaction. She had light brown hair and with parts dyed green, and her eyes were about as emerald as mine, with freckles patterned perfectly across her face, to not distract from the rest of her. I let go of the cat faunus. Everyone okay?
We're fine. No one was hurt. Well, besides the guy himself, of course.
We're getting food.
Good.
Making friends already?
Shush. Olivia gently touched my back as we walked away. The other cat faunus looked spaced out, trying to comprehend what was going on. I looked around, putting her hood on. She looked at me. You wanted to hide those, didn't you?
Well, I've just had,
I held up my hand to stop her. You don't have to explain it to us. It's your business, and we respect it. What's your name?
Plum Callos.
Rowan Reignier.
Prince Rowan.
Plum looked confused as I did a quick glance at Amethyst, who looked away. I was hoping to keep things quiet.
Seems, I'm not the only person who wants to hide things.
He would rather stay under the radar. We're a small village, but any sort of showing of his position could cause problems.
As long as you keep quiet about my ears, I'll keep quiet about your prince-ness.
That is appreciated. I heard another throat clearing. 2 this time, from each Olivia and Amethyst. This is my mate, Olivia Orchard, and my personal guard, Amethyst Arcadia. The introduction made Olivia wrap an arm around mine, and Amethyst stretched her wings out a little bit. We all looked towards the stage as people began forming. I bowed to Plum, making her blush. We'll meet up later.
You don't have to bow, just go. Want to stay under the radar, remember?
I stood up straight again and nodded. Right. We'll see you later, Plum. As we walked away, I stopped and looked back. Honestly, I think you look better with your hood down. Olivia giggled a little bit at Plum's dumbstruck reaction, while she redirected me towards the stage.
Even out of Teodal, you are still trying to be a good chieftain.
I just want all of our kind to show their attributes freely. Olivia kissed my cheek.
Never said it was a bad thing, my love.
It's no Atlas, but it isn't the worst place I've been. I would think to myself as the bulkhead made its descent to the landing area. Coming in, I had possibly the best view of Vale and Beacon, and yet it didn't even come close to Atlas. The only thing I could think of was that it was at least warmer. Gathering my belongings and shouldering my bag and weapons case, I stood up and walked towards the airship's side exit door as it descended towards the landing pad. Desperately did I want to get off this tin can and get the orientation underway. Well, I shouldn't call it a tin can. This was a free ride given from the Atlesian military themselves. And the craft was far more superior than the rust buckets crowding the skies and dropping off the other students to Beacon. When the door inevitably opened, I took a single step before jumping out of the ship. It was a solid 2 feet before hitting the ground as I then began my march towards the Academy. The ship wasted no time in pulling away and starting its return back to Atlas. Why waste time landing when all I had to do was exit the vehicle? At least they were courteous enough to drop me off so close to the ground. They knew I would be fine dropping from farther. Other people would watch and stare as I marched towards Beacon's courtyard entrance. Guess they weren't used to seeing what I viewed as such a standard drop-off. Most of them looked young, fresh out of combat school, quite inexperienced compared to me when it comes to battle. Judging purely by how they look and are dressed, I could only assume a majority of them were from Vale and Mistral, while only a few others appear to be from the wastes of AkYoung. Sure, I could spot a few Atlesians here and there, but even they didn't seem all that impressive. That's when the stench hit me. The smell of what I almost believed to be a rotting corpse, but quickly distinguished as just someone who hadn't hit the showers in months. A runt of a boy approached me, the source of the odor. He was a foot shorter with dark blue eyes and light blue hair. He was scrawny and pathetic looking. His arms and legs looked like twigs held together by the smallest of muscle mass. He would open his mouth to speak and his breath reeked of decomposing skunk.
Couldn't help but notice that sweet-ass entrance. Speaking of sweet ass, yours isn't half bad either, sweet cheeks. So, what you say we get together sometime and you could show me an even better entrance?
Typical. Another guy trying to get some action. At least the men back in Atlas were a bit more respectful and just peeked at the merchandise while I was otherwise engaged. I towered over this pathetic attempt at a huntsman in training and stared down with an annoyed frown, not saying a word. Like most I give this look, his cocky face became one of disturbed fear. He quickly recoiled before wandering off, approaching the next girl and beginning his act all over again. Sooner or later, he's gonna get what's coming to him, and it will not be what he's hoping for. Moving past the encounter with the scrawny skunk, I couldn't help but reevaluate my decision. Sure, he was bad, but most of the other students didn't appear to be that much better. There was a cat faunus who looked just as scrawny walking off towards the garden entrance. A girl with a bow who kept diving from thing to thing like it was revolutionary. A boy with his hoodie pulled up, walking so eerily quiet and skulking in the shadows. Although I could have sworn I've seen someone like that before. And a girl who appears to have just gotten out of bed carrying so many bags and toolboxes that most could have easily mistaken her for an airfield mechanic if she wasn't so young. If Beacon was accepting what appears to be the worst generation of future huntsmen and huntresses, their standards must have dropped so low. I almost considered radioing the bulkhead to turn around and pick me back up, but waved that idea away as I remembered why I decided to come here in the first place. I'm not going to stand in your shadow as you continue to stand in the spotlight, Mother. I come from a long line of military officers and personnel. My mother was no exception. Staying at Atlas, even what most would deem as incredible feats would be overshadowed by her own. I needed to head to a place where I could show my own worth without some extremely high standard to compare it to. Make no mistake, I will surpass her one day. But I want to do it on my own, and without her watching overhead. Just then, the outer courtyard was filled with the echo of a girl yelling, a voice I also swore I had heard from somewhere before. I looked over to see a black-haired wolf faunus girl being hit on by the runt from before. She was my height, and it was hard to tell where she was from. Either Atlas or Mistral, judging by her clothes. And I couldn't get a good look at her pale face from the angle, in addition to her pair of shades. Her fist was clenched and raised, her mouth open with a snarl and baring teeth as white as the Atlas snow. It appeared that the pipsqueak had finally chosen the wrong person to press, with what he considered charm.
The fuck did you just call me? How dare you refer to me that way when you are nothing more than a disgusting pig that smells like he just crawled out of a septic tank? Do us all a damn favor and clean yourself and your act.
Before anyone else could have comprehended what happened, the girl had the kid lifted up by the back of his shirt, tossed into the air, and with a well-placed kick to the groin, he was sent flying and screaming over our heads into the nearby courtyard fountain. Like everyone else, I was speechless for a moment. Maybe there were more to some of these students than what meets the eye. I almost slapped myself for ignoring a lesson my father taught me in basic training. Never underestimate your opponents. Still, the moment had passed, and as people rushed over to check on the drowning rat, I would finally break the silence that I had been holding since I landed. Damn.
All things considered, my first day here is going great! Sure, I almost missed the connecting flight in Beacon earlier today, but I made a friend as soon as I got here. What's better is she doesn't seem like the type of friends I usually make who forget all about me and wander off, so I felt comfortable as I approached the food court stall. My mouth watering for another hot dog, I couldn't help but jump from side to side as I waited my turn in line. As soon as everyone else was taken care of, I zoomed right up to the counter. Hey again! 3 more hot snakes, please.
You mean hot dogs?
Oh, right. You guys use dogs over here. Poor puppers. Yes, 3 hot dogs. The man running the stall looked confused and concerned. Was it something I said? Yet again, everyone seemed to have that look, so that just might be how people are around here, as well as back in VicManuelVO. Still, I watched as the man quickly grabbed some buns and some nicely cooked hot dogs.
Okay, here are your dogs. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. What do I owe you?
It's free. Just like last... Ow!
I took some lian out of my pocket and forced it into his hand. Although, a lot harder than I meant to. Thank you for the food!
My hand!
With that, I started to skip away to meet back up with my friend. As I scarfed down a dog, I did a recount of how much lian I was left with. Looking at how much was left, I knew I was going to have to skip a few meals this week. But the hot dogs were worth it, and those doggies' meat will not go to waste! Pocketing my money and stuffing another hot dog in my mouth, I would glance at some of the students around me. While I could tell a few were from VicManuelVO, most seemed to be from the other kingdoms, and a lot more interesting. Like the blonde lady and her fox faunus friend who looked like they came from royalty. Or like the black-haired girl standing alone with everyone avoiding her like the plague. Or the cat faunus who seemed concerned about us before. He seemed nice.
I thought you said you were going to get more food?
I ate it. Still kind of hungry, though. She would give me a look of pure astonishment and shock before shaking her head. Just then, the sound of a nevermore screeching... Oh, wait, the sound of a microphone being touched. Always get the two mixed up. Would echo through the courtyard. Up on a recently set up platform, a woman with a tablet could be found waiting for everyone's attention. Truth be told, I had no idea who she was, but she looked important. She stood tall, even while being on the stage. Her hair a faded red, one of only 2 showing her age. A scar running from her cheek down the side of her neck. Her blue eyes definitely examined everything all at once. Kinda like me at the rare buffet I get to see. Her long red cloak going to her ankles. I briefly noticed an axe head, dust-infused, hanging out in one pocket of her cloak as she turned to view the rest of the growing crowd as well. Once the crowd quieted down, she would clear her throat and begin talking.
Hello, everyone. For those who do not recognize me, I am Indigo Pyrus, headmaster of Beacon Academy. Firstly, I will congratulate you all for making it into my school, and hopefully you all had time to enjoy the food and festivities. Secondly, I will apologize, for your training as future huntsmen and huntresses begins now. I understand most of you have just gotten here, whether that be from the close-by city of Vale, the frozen streets of Atlas, the mountainous peaks of Mistral, or the desert sands of VicManuelVO. But a huntsman can be needed at any time. Consider this your first test.
The woman would press something on her tablet, and a glowing screen would appear behind her. Neat. Don't see many of those in VacUO. On the screen, however, there would be things I've seen too many of. Grim. Images of Beowulfs, Ursa, Orbitusks, Creeps, Nevermores of all sizes would appear in what looked like a ruined city. With them, a map of what I could only assume was that city.
Soon, you will all be boarding the bulkheads at the landing pads to begin your first trial. We are sending you to Mount Glen, a former attempt at expanding Vale that ended in disaster. The city is crawling with all kinds of grim. A perfect training ground to test your courage and skills, and establish your teams. Upon landing, the first person you encounter down there will be your partner. And no, you cannot abandon them for a different one. Within the city, you will also find a room containing relics. It is you and your partner's mission to recover a relic and make it back to the rendezvous point, as displayed on the map. Memorize this while you can, for you will not have a map on the ground.
With that, I would stare at the map for a few seconds before deciding that I'd stared at it enough. This seems honestly pretty easy. Just go from point A to point B to point C and kill any grim that gets in the way. Just like foraging and hunting back home. Wait, where was I supposed to go again? Oh no, she already put the map away and transitioned to another image.
We will warn you. A few dangerous grim have been spotted lurking around the city. Use your best judgment whether to attack or avoid. Our teachers will be watching you from the shadows, but will not interfere. Do not worry about your bags and luggage. Just bring what equipment and weaponry you think you may need and leave the rest with our staff. They will be delivered to your dorms once the trial is over and the teams have been decided. Good luck, and we will have a celebration upon your return. Happy hunting.
Well, good thing I got my bow, quiver, and extra dust crystals already on me. Making sure my bag was zipped up tight and my dust tape patches were holding, I tagged it and left it with one of the Beacon staff members. I almost started to zoom toward the nearest bulkhead before I remembered about Clover. Looking around, I finally spotted her, grabbing some items from her bags and metal boxes and stuffing it into her side bag. What you bringin'? What's your weapon? Is it a knife gun hammer? Knew a guy back home with one. He nearly died trying to use it. It wasn't the best weapon idea in all honesty. Kinda shocked he went with it. Wait, how about dust? Do you use dust? Dust is amazing. I use it every chance I get. Clover put her hand over my mouth again.
I try not to fight Grim head-on. I let them come to me. If I were to go over all I had, we probably would be here for the rest of the day. And yeah, that knife hammer sounds stupid. I mean, how is that even practical? What, do you shoot the knife and have a shorter hammer? What idiot?
I just stood there and listened as she rambled on, tagging her bags and leaving them with the staff members as well. Together, we walked, well, she walked. I skipped to one of the bulkheads and awaited takeoff. Waits for Grim to come to her. I can't wait to see what she has in store for that. Hopefully it involves dust. If not, oh well. I got enough on me to bring down at least one of those towering buildings that were in those pictures. Suddenly, the bulkhead would rumble and start to take off the ground, immediately speeding toward our destination. Let's do this! Yahoo!